Pay attention to this, a quiet suburban street. Late afternoon sunlight. A security camera mounted above a garage door captures two figures walking toward a house. A woman and a teenage girl. The woman's hand rests gently on the girl's shoulder, guiding her forward. They look like family. They look comfortable, normal, safe. They unlock the door. They step inside. The door closes. 3 hours later, only one of them walks back out. The timestamp on the footage reads 30:27 p.m., 11 seconds of video. That is the last confirmed moment anyone ever saw the girl alive. At first, the question everyone asked was simply, where did she go? But that was the wrong question. The right question was, who walked in with her? Her name was Lily Carter, 17 years old, a senior in high school. She had a 3.8 GPA and a habit of writing little notes to herself in the margins of her notebooks, reminders, quotes, ideas for the future. She wanted to study behavioral psychology in college. Her teachers described her as observant. The kind of student who didn't just memorize answers, she asked why the answers were correct. Her friends said Lily noticed everything. If someone cut their hair, she saw it. If someone felt sad but tried to hide it, she felt it. If something didn't make sense, she didn't let it go. She ran track on weekends, volunteered at the local animal shelter twice a month, and had a small circle of close friends rather than a large social group. She wasn't loud. She wasn't invisible either. She was the kind of person people trusted with secrets because she never judged. She listened. At home, Lily kept a corkboard above her desk. Pinned to it were college brochures, a photo of her childhood dog, and a printed quote that read, "Truth always leaves a trail." No one imagined how true that sentence would become. The woman walking beside her in that CCTV footage was Marianne Cole, Lily's stepmother. Marianne had been part of Lily's life for nearly 3 years. She drove her to school when her father worked early shifts. She helped her prepare for exams. She attended parent-teacher meetings when Lily's father couldn't make it. To neighbors, she appeared calm, polite, almost overly patient. The type of adult who smiled softly and spoke gently. When Lily's biological mother passed away years earlier, Marianne stepped into the household slowly, carefully, respectfully. She never tried to replace anyone. At least that's how it looked from the outside. She remembered birthdays. She cooked Lily's favorite meals. She once stayed up until midnight helping her finish a presentation. Trust isn't built in a day. It's built in routines. And Marianne became part of Lily's routine, which is why the footage didn't raise suspicion at first. It looked ordinary. A stepmother and daughter returning home after school. Nothing unusual. Nothing alarming. Just another day captured by a silent camera that recorded thousands of similar afternoons. Except this one was different, because Lily never came back out. The day began like any other Tuesday. School ended at 30:05 p.m. Lily texted a friend about a homework assignment. At 30:12 p.m., she sent a message to her father asking if he'd be late from work. He replied yes. Marianne would pick her up, same as usual. Witnesses later said Lily looked normal leaving campus, headphones and backpack slung over one shoulder, walking toward the parking lot. No sign of fear, no urgency. No hint that anything was wrong. The drive home took 12 minutes. At 30:27 p.m., the security camera recorded them approaching the house. Marianne unlocks the door. Lily steps inside first. Marianne glances briefly toward the street before entering. The door shuts. Silence. At 6:41 p.m., Marianne reappears on the same camera. She steps outside alone, phone pressed to her ear. She looks distressed. She speaks quickly. She walks in small circles on the driveway. Minutes later, police receive a call reporting a missing teenager. According to Marianne, Lily had gone to her bedroom to change clothes after school. When Marianne finished showering, Lily was gone. The bedroom window was slightly open. Her phone was on the bed. Her shoes were near the closet. No note, no sound, no sign of forced entry. It sounded like a runaway case. It sounded like a teenager needing space. It sounded temporary. But Lily had left behind her wallet, her laptop, her track uniform for practice the next morning. And Lily Carter was not the kind of girl who disappeared without telling anyone. Police searched the house that night. Nothing broken, nothing stolen, no fingerprints that didn't belong. The open window looked staged rather than forced. Detectives marked it as suspicious but not conclusive. The official timeline still leaned toward voluntary disappearance. Friends were questioned. Teachers were contacted. Social media was reviewed. No threats. No fights. No dramatic messages. Her last search on her laptop was for university scholarship deadlines. The more they looked, the less it made sense. Because Lily planned ahead, Lily organized her weeks, Lily didn't abandon her future. Neighbors described Marianne as kind but private, helpful but distant, always polite, never personal. When investigators asked about the relationship between Lily and her stepmother, most people said the same thing. They seemed close. And that word, seemed, would later become important. Because appearances can be rehearsed, kindness can be practiced. And patience can hide intentions that take years to form. What no one knew that evening, what no one even considered, was that the story didn't begin on that Tuesday afternoon. It didn't begin when the door closed behind them. It didn't begin when the police were called. It didn't even begin when Marianne entered Lily's life 3 years earlier. The real story had started long before Lily was born, long before Marianne ever stepped into that house, long before anyone thought to look backward instead of forward. Because sometimes a disappearance is not an event. Sometimes it is the final chapter of a plan that has been quietly waiting for years. To understand what happened inside that house, you have to go back years before Lily Carter ever walked through that front door. Back to a time when her father was just a teenager. Back to a summer that never really ended for one person. In 2004, Daniel Carter was 16 years old, spending his summer at a regional debate camp 2 hours from home. It was the kind of place where friendships formed quickly, late-night conversations, shared cafeteria tables, promises to stay in touch after the season ended. That's where he met Marianne Cole. She was confident, articulate, and unusually focused for her age. While others treated camp like a vacation, Marianne treated it like preparation for a future she already imagined clearly. Daniel was drawn to that certainty. She was drawn to his warmth, the way he listened when she spoke. They spent 3 weeks inseparable. 3 weeks that, for Daniel, became a fond memory. For Marianne it became a blueprint. After the summer ended, they stayed in contact. Calls at night, messages between classes, weekend bus rides halfway between their towns. It was teenage love, intense, dramatic, full of promises that felt permanent, because neither of them had lived long enough to know what permanence actually meant. But life moved forward. By the time they were 20, Daniel had met someone else. A coworker named Alina. The relationship grew quickly, unexpectedly, and when Alina became pregnant, Daniel made a decision that changed the course of several lives. He chose responsibility. He chose marriage. He chose the life that was already forming in front of him. When Daniel told Marianne it was over, witnesses later said she didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She simply said, "I understand." And sometimes those are the most dangerous words, because understanding doesn't always mean acceptance. Sometimes it means waiting. Daniel married Alana in a small ceremony attended by close family. Within a year, Lily was born. The early years were ordinary: birthdays, school photos, weekend trips to parks. From the outside, they looked like any young family trying to build stability. But Alina's health began to decline slowly over time. Nothing dramatic at first: fatigue, migraines, occasional dizziness. Doctors attributed it to stress, long work hours, and hormonal changes after pregnancy. She was prescribed medication and advised to rest more. The symptoms came and went, manageable, explainable, easy to dismiss. Daniel focused on work to support the family. Elena focused on Lily. Life continued, imperfect but functional, and Mariana disappeared from their conversations entirely. Years passed without her name being mentioned. At least, that's what Daniel believed. In reality, Marianne had not disappeared. She had simply moved out of sight. Public records would later show that she enrolled in a local nursing program 2 years after Daniel's wedding. She graduated with strong evaluations, precise, attentive, excellent with dosage calculations. She worked quietly, rarely socialized with coworkers, and kept her personal life private. Her colleagues described her as dedicated and methodical. Words that sound admirable. Words that also describe someone capable of long-term planning. During these same years, Elena's health issues became more frequent. Hospital visits increased. Tests returned inconclusive results. Nothing pointed to a clear diagnosis. It was labeled as chronic stress compounded by migraines. A frustrating but not unusual medical mystery. Lily was only 9 when her mother collapsed one evening in the kitchen. Paramedics arrived quickly. But sometimes speed isn't enough. The official cause of death was sudden cardiac arrest. Rare, tragic, and, according to the reports at the time, unexplained. There was no criminal investigation, no suspicion, just grief. Daniel became a widower at 32. Lily lost her mother before she reached double digits, and somewhere, unseen, someone else saw an opening. Nearly 2 years later, Marianne reappeared. Not dramatically, not suspiciously, naturally. She sent Daniel a message expressing condolences she said she'd been too afraid to send earlier. She mentioned hearing about Elena's passing through a mutual acquaintance. The conversation was polite at first, then supportive, then regular. Daniel was grieving, overwhelmed, raising a daughter alone while balancing full-time work. Marianne listened. She remembered details. She offered help without pressure. She presented herself not as a rekindled romance, but as a familiar presence from a simpler time. Grief lowers defenses, loneliness opens doors, and Marianne never pushed. She waited for them to open on their own. Within a year, she was visiting occasionally, helping Lily with homework, bringing groceries, offering rides when schedules clashed. She integrated herself gradually, never forcing authority, never demanding affection. From Lily's perspective, Marianne was kind. From Daniel's perspective, Marianne was dependable. From Marianne's perspective, she was returning to a life she believed had been hers first. But patience can change shape over time. What begins as longing can become entitlement. What begins as love can become possession. And possession, when threatened, can turn into something colder. Friends later recalled small details that seemed meaningless then, Marianne asking unusual questions about Lily's school routine, Marianne keeping meticulous calendars, Marianne remembering dates Daniel himself forgot. It looked like devotion. It felt like reliability. But devotion and control can wear the same face. 3 years after re-entering Daniel's life, Marianne moved into the house permanently. By then, Lily was 14, old enough to remember her mother clearly, old enough to notice differences, young enough to still need guidance. The household stabilized. Routines formed again. Dinners at 6, study hours at 8, weekends for errands and quiet evenings. To neighbors, it looked like healing, a family rebuilding after tragedy, and for a while it worked. But healing isn't always what it appears to be. Sometimes it's replacement, sometimes it's revision, and sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it waits for the smallest crack to show itself again. Because years later, Lily Carter would find something she was never meant to see. Something small, something ordinary, something that would make her start asking questions. And questions are dangerous when someone has spent years making sure there are no answers left behind. 6 days before Lily disappeared, something changed. It was a Sunday afternoon, quiet, ordinary. Daniel was at work. Marianne was upstairs. Lily was in the living room finishing a college application draft when her pen ran out of ink. She went looking for another one and noticed Marianne's purse resting on the hallway table, slightly open. Inside the purse was a small leather wallet. Inside the wallet, a folded photograph. It was old, edges worn, colors faded. 2 teenagers standing close together, smiling at a camera from years ago. One of them was her father, the other was Marianne. Lily stared at the image longer than she expected to. The date printed on the corner was from nearly 2 decades earlier, long before her parents had met, long before she was born. It wasn't strange that her father had a past. What was strange was that no one had ever mentioned Marianne being part of it. That night, Lily searched online yearbooks, old social posts, archived school newsletters. Piece by piece, the timeline formed. Marianne hadn't just known her father, she had been deeply involved in his life. And somehow, that chapter had never been spoken about inside their home. Lily didn't accuse anyone, she observed. She listened more carefully. She began noticing tension in small moments, pauses in conversations, looks that lingered a second too long, answers that felt rehearsed. On September 14th, she told her best friend that something felt wrong, not dangerous, just hidden. 2 days later, she was gone. Investigators returned to the CCTV footage again and again. 11 seconds, a door opening, a door closing. The breakthrough didn't come from technology. It came from Lily's friend, who mentioned the photograph and the online searches. Detectives shifted their focus from where Lily might have run to what she might have discovered. They reviewed old property records, old employment files, old connections that had once seemed irrelevant. One address stood out, a small storage property registered years earlier under Marianne's name, located 40 minutes outside the city. Remote, quiet, rarely visited. A warrant was issued. Inside, officers found items that connected timelines long thought unrelated, photographs, documents, and evidence that suggested years of quiet observation rather than coincidence. In a concealed area beneath loose floor panels, they found Lily. The investigation that followed uncovered patterns stretching back far beyond a single afternoon. Medical reports were re-examined. Purchase histories reviewed. Conversations revisited. What once looked like isolated tragedies began to align into a single narrative of patience, control, and an obsession that had never truly ended. Marianne Cole was arrested 2 weeks later. The charges extended beyond one crime. The courtroom was silent when the full timeline was presented. Daniel Carter wept openly during testimony, not only for the daughter he lost, but for the years he misunderstood. The life he believed he rebuilt had been standing on a foundation he never questioned. Trust is built through repetition, through shared meals, through ordinary days that feel safe. But sometimes, the past isn't past. Sometimes it sits quietly in the background, waiting for recognition, waiting for a question, waiting for someone observant enough to notice a detail that doesn't fit. Lily Carter noticed, and in noticing, she uncovered a truth someone else had spent years trying to keep buried. If this story made you think, share your thoughts below. Subscribe for more real investigative crime stories, and remember, sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest truths.